How Babe Escaped Polo by Isola Forrester. Marie-Louise rode slowly, chin up, eyes closed, perhaps half closed, to keep back the tears. She did not look at Slim beside her on the white-footed bronco, but Slim pretended not to notice, and talked just as if she were listening to him. "You see, it's this way, Marie. A pony's a pony, but a trick pony like Babe is worth an awful lot of money. That chap from the East has offered Dad 1,000 in cold cash for her. A whole 1,000, Marie. She's going to be a polo pony and move only in the upper classes, ain't you, Babe?" Slim leaned over and gave Babe a playful pat, but she curved away from him. "See that sidestep she can do?" exclaimed Slim excitedly. "Wouldn't that make them Easterners' eyes bulge? And it ain't any teaching she's had. It's just nature. Why, Marie, you ought to be glad she's going to be pampered." "She's going to be pampered by the best. That's what I heard the man tell Dad. She's my pet, and I love her, and I don't think Dad ought to sell her when she's mine," protested Marie-Louise forcibly. Marie-Louise was likely to be forcible at strenuous moments. Back at the ranch, when the furs started to fly, old Louise Betu, father of both children, would shake his head and say, with shrewdly smiling lips, "Non, non, Marie-Louise, you named for the Queen Most Charming." Today, Marie-Louise had clearly forgotten the precedent in manners set by the Queen Most Charming. She was just a ranch girl, born and bred, tanned, keen-eyed, and not very pretty. But there was a grace and vitality about her at 15 as she rode Babe over the hills that many a city girl would have envied. Even Slim's eyes rested on her admiringly. She halted abruptly at the topmost point in the mountain trail. Below them lay the Betu's ranch, a little low log shack with many straggling lean-tos wandering back from it. The sheep grazing along the lower hill slopes looked like dull gray rocks, their heads bent low. It was late October, and nearly all of the trees were swept bare of leaves. Their trunks stood out in the sharp silhouettes against the red and yellow colored ground, ankle-deep in the dry leaves. Babe lifted her soft, sensitive nose, sniffed the air restively. She startled back at the narrow path, and Marie-Louise pulled her up almost crossly. But Slim leaned forward in his saddle and looked down below them over the rocky ledge. There was a strip of timber there, and from it curled upward from the hazy, still air a thin white cloud of smoke, hardly visible. Slowly it rose and settled, hanging above the trees like a cloud. "Marie," gasped Slim, tense and alert on the instant with the true scout's instinct that scents danger. "The timber's afire. It's those Eastern chaps. They rode through there this morning, and both of them smoking cigarettes. What do they care where they throw their stubs? It ain't their woods. I wonder if Dad sees the smoke yet." "He can't," answered Marie-Louise shortly. "He's gone with the men fishing." "He's got a head start." Slim was off his pony, laying face forward over the ledge, scanning the scene below. "It will reach those spruces in an hour, crawling as if it through the leaves. I could keep it back that long, maybe, Marie. I can take my saddle blanket and wet it in that little waterfall back yonder and ride down." Marie-Louise met his eyes then, and there was a flash of understanding between them. They knew each other well, and they knew, too, what it would mean to the timber belt, and perhaps the ranch itself, if a forest fire started raging through the valley. "You do that, Slim," she said, turning Babe around on the narrow trail. "I'll go and tell Dad." "Don't run all the way," Slim shouted after the flying streak as it vanished down the mountain, but she did not even turn to wave. 4 miles lay between her and the trout brook, not level miles on a good road, but mountain miles of rough, dangerous roads where a single misstep in places would land the pony and the rider hundreds of feet below on the gray crags of the deep ravines. The smell of the smoke seemed to have set Babe half crazy. Ears back, nose out, she took to the trail as if pursued. On her back Marie Louise clung, riding like Slim himself, knees gripping the pony's sides, sitting well back, swaying with every move of the slender, supple body beneath her. Several times she half turned to look back at the pale cloud of smoke that hung over the timber. It looked like the smoke from a great campfire. Not 2 miles away from it, she knew, lay a stretch of good grazing ground where a bunch of choice cattle were herded. One whiff of the smoke, and they would all stampede, perhaps dashing headlong over the brink of a half-hidden ravine and be killed. She knew that Slim would do his best to beat it back, but the strength of one boy was little against a fire that had got a good start among the dry leaves, and might be smoldering in 20 places. So she leaned forward over Babe's neck and tried to make her understand what was expected of her. Babe realized it. Carefully she picked her way down the dangerous places in the trail, then let out for speed where the road lay clear ahead. Never had Marie enjoyed a ride as she did that one, which she thought was her last one on Babe. The very next day her pet was to be sold and shipped east for a polo pony. A polo pony! Even in the excitement of the ride, a surge of indignation swept through Marie Louise's heart to think of her wild, light-footed ranch pet spending the rest of her life chasing polo balls, and safely away from Slim's boyish chaffing. She let the tears fall freely on Babe's glossy neck. Betu was out in midstream, trolling contentedly for rainbow and brown beauties in the deep pools of Little Laramie River, when he heard the clear coo-ee above him on the hillside. He knew the signal of danger, and without a word left his fishing. "The timber's burning, Dad!" cried Marie Louise, galloping towards him, and Betu shouting the news downstream to his 2 eastern guests, scrambled towards his own horse. At night the men from the ranch worked fighting back the fire, and all night Marie Louise rode between the ranch and the fighting line, carrying fresh coffee and food on Babe. When it was over, and the last smoldering embers were stamped out, she stood beside her father, looking at the blackened trees. Babe was nearby, nosing hungrily around. "That was a good ride you took to warn me, Marie," the old ranchman remarked proudly. "I don't think $10,000 can buy this pony, huh?" Marie Louise flashed her quick smile at him and said nothing. She knew Babe was safe from Polo. Slim turned to grin happily at her, but Babe only lifted a hungry nose, sniffing towards where the home ranch lay. The end. I hope you've enjoyed these stories from the book Courageous Girls. It's retold from the magazine St. Nicholas. Was a magazine for young children back in the day, and I've found books that have retold these stories, and they're true stories that are condensed. So Molly of Oahu and the brave little Madeline were true stories. I read a book called Madeline Takes Command when I was a little girl, and that's also based on the true story of Madeline. And it's really fires your imagination to see how people lived in the olden days. The next book I'm going to be reading is called The Girl Scouts Canoe Trip. It's about a company of girls that go camping. It should be a lot of fun to read, so join me next for that. And I try and read the girl stories on Wednesdays, the adventure stories on Fridays or Saturday, and then something more religious on Sundays.